You walk into a store you've visited 100 times, you pick up the same item you always buy, you check the price. It's higher, but not in a way that feels normal. Yesterday, it was cheaper. Tomorrow, no one knows. You hesitate not because you don't have money, but because the price no longer tells you what the item is worth. This is how it begins. Not with collapse, not with panic, with confusion. When prices stop making sense, money hasn't failed yet. But trust has. At first, people assume it's temporary. A supply issue, a delay, a bad week. They keep buying, they keep paying, but something feels off. 2 stores, 2 prices, same product. One price changes daily, the other disappears. Which one is real? In normal times, prices do the thinking for us. They tell us what's scarce, what's affordable, what can wait. When that signal breaks, every decision becomes heavier. Should you buy now or wait? Is this expensive or just early? People don't notice the moment prices lose, meaning they notice the hesitation, standing in front of shelves longer than usual, checking phones, asking quiet questions. Is this going up again? Did you hear anything? Should I buy too? This is not greed. It's self-protection. When prices drift away from reality, people stop optimizing for value. They optimize for timing. They buy earlier, they buy less, they buy differently. And slowly, behavior changes. In Weimar Germany, inflation didn't destroy the economy overnight. It eroded coordination. Prices changed faster than wages. Menus were reprinted daily. By the time you ordered, the number no longer applied. People stopped asking, how much does it cost? They asked, how long is this price good for? That question alone tells you everything. A price that expires isn't a price. It's a warning. The same pattern appears every time prices detach in modern crises. The numbers still exist. They're just unreliable. One day, essentials are affordable. The next, they're locked behind limits, not because food vanished, but because pricing failed to allocate it fairly. This is when people begin to test boundaries. They visit multiple stores. They compare not prices, but availability. They learn which cashier is flexible, which seller will negotiate, which payment method works today. Price tags become suggestions. Relationships become leverage. When prices stop making sense, information becomes currency. Who knows where goods arrived? Who heard about a restock? Who has access before opening hours? The market doesn't disappear. It fragments, and in that fragmentation, survival shifts from earning more to choosing better. People adjust their routines first. They shop earlier, they avoid peak times, they change brands, then categories. Name recognition replaces quality. Familiar replaces optimal. Why risk something new when the price might double tomorrow? Then they adjust their expectations. They stop planning months ahead. They stop saving for later purchases. Why save money that shrinks while you wait? Consumption pulls forward. Hoarding begins quietly, not panic buying, strategic accumulation. People don't clear shelves because they're irrational. They do it because prices stopped coordinating restraint. When the future is more expensive by default, waiting becomes a loss. This is where inequality sharpens. Those with stable income absorb confusion longer. Those without feel it immediately. A fixed salary delays the pain. Irregular income magnifies it. If your pay arrives late, but prices rise early, you are always behind. You don't feel inflation as a statistic. You feel it as exclusion, standing in front of something you could afford last week and can't today. This is when people begin to improvise. They substitute goods. They trade quality for quantity. They downgrade quietly. And when substitution runs out, they change systems. They negotiate. They barter small favors. They rely on personal networks, because when prices stop making sense, exchange doesn't stop. It changes shape. And the people who adapt first aren't the smartest. They're the most flexible. They don't ask what things cost. They ask what still works. As price confusion spreads, rules quietly change. Not official rules, practical ones. Stores limit quantities. Not because supplies are gone, but because prices no longer protect them. If one customer can buy everything at a price that will be wrong tomorrow, the shelf empties today. So limits appear: one per person, two per family, cash only, no returns. These aren't signs of collapse, they're signs of uncertainty. When prices fail to ration demand, rationing replaces prices. People learn this fast. They split purchases across stores. They bring different people. They visit on different days, not to cheat, to keep life normal. This is how adaptation looks before desperation. In the Soviet Union's final years, official prices barely changed, but availability did. Bread was cheap, if you could find it. Meat had a price. If you waited long enough, money told one story, time told another. Queues became a second currency. Knowing when to line up mattered more than how much cash you had. Connections mattered more than wages. People didn't ask, "How much is this?" They asked, "Do you know someone?" Price stability without supply stability creates illusion. An illusion collapses faster than numbers. The same pattern appears in modern crises. Price controls freeze numbers. Shortages move behavior. When prices are capped below reality, goods don't vanish. They relocate to back rooms, to favored customers, to informal channels. Official prices remain. Real prices migrate. This is how parallel markets are born. Not from greed, from misalignment. When a price cannot express scarcity, scarcity expresses itself elsewhere. People pay in time, in favors, in relationships. The transaction doesn't disappear, it mutates. And this mutation favors certain people. Those with flexible schedules wait longer. Those with connections access earlier. Those with surplus trade privately. Everyone else adapts downward. They reduce variety. They repeat meals. They simplify life, not because they want less, but because decision-making has become expensive. Every purchase requires thought. Every thought drains energy. So people choose predictability over optimization. The cheapest option becomes irrelevant. The reliable option becomes king. Brands lose meaning. Availability becomes loyalty. This is why, in times of price confusion, people seem irrational to outsiders. Why would anyone buy today instead of waiting? Because waiting no longer guarantees a better outcome. In normal systems, delay is rewarded. In unstable systems, delay is punished. When prices rise unpredictably, time becomes the enemy. This changes social behavior too. People talk about prices constantly, not as information, but as warning. Don't buy that yet. Buy it now. It won't be there tomorrow. Markets turn conversational. Rumors replace data. Anecdotes replace statistics. Who paid what becomes more important than what it's listed for. At this stage, money still circulates, but it no longer coordinates trust. That's the critical shift. When money fails to coordinate expectations, people stop using it as a reference. They use each other. This is when informal exchange quietly expands. A favor now for access later. A repair in exchange for priority. A skill traded to bypass limits. Not full barter yet, but movement in that direction. The system hasn't collapsed. It's drifting. And drift is harder to detect than failure because nothing breaks cleanly. Prices still exist. Stores are still open. Money still changes hands. But meaning has thinned. And when meaning thins, behavior fills the gap. People don't wait for permission to adapt. They do what keeps life moving. Which is why, long before shelves are empty, the real change has already happened. Prices stopped making sense. And survival stopped being about earning more and became about choosing wisely. Price confusion doesn't stay abstract for long. Eventually, it hardens into absence. Not because goods stop existing, but because the system stops moving them where they're needed. When prices fail to signal scarcity, producers hesitate. Distributors slow down. Sellers protect themselves. Why restock today at a price that won't cover tomorrow? So deliveries shrink. Shelves thin out. Choice narrows. This is when people realize the problem was never numbers. It was coordination. In places where price controls are imposed, The pattern is predictable. Official prices remain frozen. Real demand doesn't. So goods split into two paths. One stays visible, cheap, scarce, limited. The other disappears, expensive, available, quiet. Backdoors open, favored lists form, payment methods change. Nothing illegal needs to happen for this to work. Just discretion. Those who can pay differently gain access. Those who can adapt wait. Time becomes the new price hours in line. Days without certainty. Weeks of adjustment. People start planning around availability, not income. They learn delivery schedules. They map restock times. They memorize which days matter. Life shrinks to logistics. And with that shrinkage, something important changes. Trust moves away from institutions. It moves to people. The cashier who warns you early, the neighbor who shares information, the contact who can save one for you. Social capital replaces financial capital. Not officially, functionally. This is how informal economies quietly expand, not as rebellion, as repair. When formal systems can't match reality, informal ones fill the gap. They aren't efficient, they aren't fair, but they respond faster. This is why attempts to suppress them usually fail. You can control prices, you can restrict sales, you can enforce limits. You can't stop people from adapting. An adaptation always follows the same logic. Reduce exposure, increase certainty, rely on networks. People simplify consumption. They standardize meals. They reuse more. Choice feels like risk now. So people stop experimenting. Variety collapses before supply does. This is one of the earliest signals of deeper trouble. When markets offer fewer options, not because they can't, but because buyers don't want to risk uncertainty. At this stage, money still functions barely, but it no longer provides comfort. It no longer answers the question people care about most. Will this still work tomorrow? Once that question dominates, prices have already failed. The next phase doesn't arrive suddenly. It arrives quietly, transaction by transaction. Negotiation replaces acceptance. Favors replace discounts. Access replaces affordability. People don't announce this shift. They sense it, and when they do, behavior changes permanently. Even if prices later stabilize, habits don't fully revert. People remember confusion longer than scarcity. They remember the moment numbers stopped helping. That memory reshapes trust for years. This is why inflation leaves psychological scars long after statistics recover. This is why people hoard even when shelves refill. This is why cash feels unsafe even when it technically works. Because once prices lose, meaning people learn that systems can drift without warning. And they don't forget, the lesson here isn't about predicting collapse. It's about recognizing transition. Price confusion is not the end of an economy. It's the beginning of adaptation. It's the phase where survival becomes behavioral, not financial. Where success belongs to those who read signals early, not those who wait for clarity. And in the next story, we'll follow what happens when this drift continues. When confusion hardens into shortage. When access replaces affordability completely, because long before shelves are empty, life has already changed. And that's where scarcity truly begins.